What's up guys, Theo here. In this video we're going to go through the main new features in ES6 in about 10 minutes. First let's start with var, let, and const. So obviously we know in JavaScript we can declare a variable with var keyword and we can just say var name is Theo. Then we can just log out what name is, right, and we'll get Theo. And then now we can also edit it to Theodore, and if we log out the value of name again, we've operated on this variable and that's no problem. Let is a little bit different, so if we name that same variable Theo and we log out Theo, then we go ahead and change it to John, log it out again, you'll see we'll still get that, right, but it is block scoped. So what that means is although var might be hoisted and is always going to be a little bit more global, let is going to be hoisted. So say we have a variable name and then here we have a condition, right? If x is equal to 5, then we want to update name to John. Otherwise, let's update name to Theo. We can sort of see down here, if we log out what name is, we're going to get x is not defined, of course, because we can't actually have any variables that aren't defined. So we'll say x is equal to 10, and we'll get Theo, right? But actually what happens here is if I declare this variable inside of here, I'm going to say let name. Now if I try to log name, it is undefined, but in this case var is not block scoped. So that's the main difference with var and let. Just good practice to use let over things that might change in your application, more state managed things. Now we have const. Const is obviously you would think of a constant, but this is a constant with variables with primitive types. So if we say x equals 5, we log out what x is, and then we try to define x to 10. We're going to say assignment to a constant variable, so we can't actually update this because this is a primitive type. But so we have an object, so we have a user object, and this has a name property on it of Theo. We are free to not actually just define this and change it back to an array, right? We can't do that, or we can't even set it equal to an empty object. But what we can do is we can add on new properties, right? We're allowed to do that, and we can actually go ahead and update the specific properties on the object itself, and we can log out user itself. And so basically constant is more important when you're working with stuff that just can't change. But again, it's not the references inside of it that can't change, it's basically the data structure itself. Okay, so blocks, another cool thing. So with ES5, everything else, you have these ifs, right, that are good for enclosing your code and running it anonymously and making sure that nothing leaks out, right? We have this name, or we'll just say test equals 5, and then we try and log out what test is here. We're going to get test is not defined, right? Okay, because we've scoped this here. ES6 we have blocks, so in the same way I could say let name is equal to, or let test is equal to 5, and I could just log out what test is. And again, we'll get test not defined, so we can do any logic we want in these self-contained blocks. Cool. Next up, arrow functions. So this is more important when we're dealing with the context of this. Basically, so we have this function called greet, and it just takes in a name. This is a regular function. We're just going to return hello plus name. Very common, very easy function. And we say greet Theo, and then we just wrap this in a const.log so we can see the output. So, right, this says hello Theo. Comment this out. Cool. So that's greet. If we wanted to change the same function to an arrow function, we can say const greet name, and I'm going to use a template literal. I'm going to say hello name, and we can see the function works the same. But the difference here is if we go back up here and log out what this context is, we can sort of see console log this. This, in this case, is going to be the node environment, the main process, the window. But if we were to log out that same thing inside of here, just change this a little bit, and console log this. So we're going to get undefined, because the reason why that this is undefined inside of this function is because ES6 arrow functions do not actually inherit any scope in that sense. They're going to, so say, the best way to describe this is, say we have two functions inside of here. We have a function greet and we have a function inner, const inner, and we just want to log out what this is inside of here. We could say inner. Now if we look at this, let me look real quick. Let's look inner, and let's look at what this is. So again, this is now the window. Let me make sure I'm doing this right. Greet. Okay. So again, it is actually the window in this case, or the main process, because it's not going to inherit from anything. So it's going to take the main child, or the main parent context, which in the context of a function, this keyword is still this, and in strict mode, this would be undefined, because that's the way strict mode works. Okay, so again, mainly just wanted to show the arrow function syntax. There's two different ways to do it. We can, if we have one parameter, we can omit the parens and just say name. And then if we just have the fat arrow, we can do an implicit return, something like that. One-liner. If we need to do more logic, we can open up another set of braces, and then we need a return statement at the end, right? So either one is fine. If we have more than one variable, we might do const greet equals, and then we're going to have name, age, etc. And we can still do implicit return, but more variables, usually you're going to want to do some logic, etc. And you could return something from there. Okay, cool. So let's look at string includes and repeat. There's two new methods on the string prototype. So we can have theo.includes t. All right, so let's just log this out. I'm going to show you how this works. Okay, so it includes t, right? So basically this is like index of, but it's going to return to us Boolean. And finally we have repeat. So we'll say theo.repeat 3. And there we go. So we have just repeated 3 times. Might take another argument. Not sure, to be honest. I hardly ever use this, but just another feature on the string prototype. Next we have template strings. So in ES5 you might do something like this. Hello plus name, right? And we're going to get, if we log this out to the console, we're going to get the concatenation of that, right? If we need a space, we'll do that. With the ES6 we have a template string, so we have const greeting, and we're going to do it with the two backtext that's located right under the escape keyboard on a Mac, or left of the 1. So in this same way, we're given the freedom to write everything without a ton of sort of annoying plus signs or addition signs for concatenation. And we'll just say hello, and I could even define a variable here, and I can interpolate these variables right inside of here. And the interpolation won't happen with $sign and then open and closing braces, and at the end we'll close the backtick. We'll log out what greeting is, and there you go. And you need to take away the space, you can do it. Awesome. Destructuring arrays objects. So let's look at this. Say we have an array of users, and each user basically is going to be an object. We'll just say name Theo, age is 24, and then we'll have maybe just another empty array right here, 1, 2, 3. So I can destructure this, and I'm just going to say destructured. I'm going to say user, and maybe scores is going to be equal to the users. Now if I log out user and scores, let me just do the users. I'll use the backticks. I'll say user, and then I'll do scores, and we'll log out this, and we have user object, right? So we know for a fact it is that object, but if I log out user.name, I can show you that it is Theo and scores. So what happened is that these two variables were destructured or assigned at runtime to these values corresponding in their indices in that array. So that's how you do it with an array. let's look at how to do it with an object. So same sort of thing. So we have a user object in this case, and it's going to have a name, Theo, age of 24, and say I just want to destructure this, so I can say age name equals user, and then I can console log age and name. And in the same way, we get these values because these are keys on the object. Awesome. So that's one of my favorite ES6 features. Quickly go through module exports, quickly go through ES6 exports and imports. If you want to export a default value out of your module, it would be export default. In the same way, we can export, and say if we had a function here, we can say const get user, and then I can go ahead and const get user. I want to use the arrow syntax. I can export get user, right? It's going to arrow me, but that's how you would export named exports. And then in the same way, if we have a named export, I can say get user from the file, and then the default import is just like that. So without the braces, almost like the destructuring. Cool, default parameters, let's look at that. So say we have a function called, let's just say withdraw money, and it has an amount, and we'll just say if the amount isn't defined, we'll just say 50, and we'll just say return, here is your money, and we will interpolate, right? And so we'll say console log withdraw money, and we'll say 100, and it's going to say here's your money 100, and though if we default to undefined, we'll get amount equals 50. So this is basically like doing amount equals amount or 50, same sort of thing. It's just sort of nice and a little bit more readable. Cool. Rest parameters, let's look at this. Hopefully this will work with the Harmony. Basically we can create a function called, we'll just say simple rest, and this will have in a name, and then we'll sum up all the other args right here, and let's just log out what the args are. So let's see simple rest, we'll say Theo, and we'll say 1, 2, 3. So this will take the rest of our arguments and put them in an array for us. Cool. Alright, so let's look at name parameters. A good way to think about this is sort of going back to the default parameters, but we are sort of destructuring out. So say we have a function called save user, or basically, yeah, maybe save user to DB, and instead of just taking out a specific user, and we need to do a lot more validation on it, right? Perhaps just the way we have our application structured, I'm going to destructure these arguments out of users, so I can say name, age, height, whatever it might be, and then I can look at these values and evaluate them, and I think I should be able to give them default variables, default values as well. So let's look at this. I'm going to say save user to DB, and this accepts a user object name, John, age is 25, height is 72. So I have save user to DB, and if we don't actually put in a name, then it's going to default to Theo. So again, really easy for readability and helps you sort of have a little bit more validation and a little bit more strictness on what you're actually accepting as your parameters. So spread operator, let's look at this. Sort of similar to the rest operator, but what we can do is we can spread out a bunch of elements onto an array. So say we have a bunch of arrays. So we have const R1, 1, 2, 3, const R2 equals 4, 5, 6, and const R3 equals 7, 8, 9. Then we can just say spreaded equals R1, R2, and R3. And I need one more dot there. I'm going to console log spreaded. Okay. And that will give us all these values spread out. This is a really popular pattern in passing props in React. So you can also do it with the properties of an object. So what I could do is I could have, I'll show this, I could just have a const object. It's just a throwaway object maybe. It's a user, has a name of Theo, and an age of 24, and then I could say const example object is going to be equal to basically just this user object, and what I want to do actually is do object.assign. I can do user, and then I could go ahead and actually just return. I could do. I'm trying to think. Return user token example equals props 3 and then user. Yeah, it might not accept the spread on the object. I think I need the object rest spread operator. But anyways, you can do it for the objects as well. Okay, so let's look at classes real quick. And if you're more curious about this, hold me up to it and I'll show you in the next video. So classes are sort of this syntactic or sort of pseudo-syntactic way of actually writing classes. So let's look at how to define a class. Say class user, open with the braces. Every class will have a constructor. And this is where you can pass in some default arguments, whatever you want. And this will be instantiated on the new keyword for that user. And also have static methods that can just be accessed, so we could have our classes service more as services, or basically just API layers. And we could have sort of a static property here, just called getUser, right? Takes in a name, and it's just going to console log the name, so we could actually say user.getUser John. It's going to say John. Okay, cool. So we notice we don't have to instantiate something like that. And this is where we'll set our properties right here. This .name equals name. We can define everything we want. We can also define variables outside of here. We can have them be class variables or instance variables. So we could say, just say version is 3, right? We do something like that. Say const. Or why is it not letting me define? Yeah, it might not be letting me define. I might need a Babel transform for that. I'm thinking I might be mistaken, but yeah, you can define instance variables as well. And version is 3. Yeah, I might need to. But anyways, you should be able to have instance properties as well. And that's sort of the general pattern of how that works. Cool. Let's look at a few more things. Let's look at maps, get and set. A map is a common data structure in ES6. We say const map equals a new map. We sort of look at our map, what it is. Map is almost like a hash map. It has a few operations on it, so we can say map.set. We'll say user is Theo. And let's look at the map now. So map, user maps to Theo, right? And we could say map.has user. Okay, true. And we could say map.get user. This will return to us back Theo. And then we can also iterate over the map keys using a for each. So let me give an explanation of how to do that real quick. We can easily transform a map data structure as well to an array. So we'll say map.forEach key, and I just want to console log the key. Let me make sure this works in here. So there we go. That's going to console.log all of the values. And if we want to look at sort of how to change this to an array, we can say array.from map.forEach, and then we can say it's going to be value index array, and we can just log out val index array right there, and we can sort of see user Theo's, user Theo, etc. Cool. So it's the map. Let's look at promises real quick. So I might have to change this to text in like 20 or 30 minutes, but let's look at promises, and we go and comment that out for everyone. Promises, we'll look at race all and then. So promises are basically the expectation of a value that you're going to get so it has an asynchronous API. So I'm just going to say we have a database call, and what I can do here is I can say const promise equals a new promise, and this takes in resolve and a reject function. And then what I want to do is I'm just going to simulate using a set timeout, and then I'm going to call after 2 seconds. I'm going to call resolve, and then I'm going to say okay, good to go. And then what I can do with this promise is what's called thenable, which means it has an operation on it called then, which is basically when you get the data back. And then this is going to return to us some data. I'm going to console log out this data. So let's look at what happens here. We're going to wait 2 seconds. Okay, good to go. And then what I can keep doing here is then console log 5. Let's look at this. So we got 5 first. Good to go. So we got this first again because this will keep running regardless. It's asynchronous, and then we can do other things. We can do catch. If we have an error, we can log out the error. And let's sort of look at this. Let's change this to reject error. So let's look at this. Error is not defined. Let me change this to error. Okay, so let's look one more time. Now we're getting the error, and I think, let's see if this has the finally on it. The finally will run regardless. We'll just say console log finally, and yeah, I don't think it has finally on it. So anyway, so you want .then .catch. What we can also do is we can say const promise 1. I can grab this. I can say const promise 2, and I'm going to have these both resolve to got 'em 2, got 'em 1. And then I'm going to run promise.all, and this will take in promise 1, promise 2. I can then call .then, and then I'm going to get back basically my response at this point. And I'm going to look at what my response is. I should have an array, and they'll be in that same order that we sent them in. And let's look for this. Okay, so we got unhandled promise rejection. Okay, let me change this back to resolve. And now I will show you we'll get 2 back. So we got 'em 1, got 'em 1. So we could also destructure this right here. We could say, or we could just say, yeah, that's fine for now. It's not a big deal. But anyways, so we could get this response back, and then we could just say const. We could do something like this, like first, second equals response, and then we could just log out first, second, and then we could call .then on it, and we could just say console log 5, right? So it's gonna run, etc. Got 'em 1, got 'em 2. Cool. Finally, let's look at promise.race. So if you have a race condition and you need to just work with the data that you're getting at that time, we could do something like this. We could do promise.race. I think this is an array at the same time, and this will give us back the first one. 2.then. This will return the first one that responds successfully. Response. So let's look at this. They're racing, and response got 'em 1. Okay, but if I change this back to 1, then we should get got 'em 2 at this 2. Okay, cool. So that's the promise API right there. Generators, let's look at this a little bit. So make sure I'm doing this correctly. So a generator is basically just a way of creating more synchronous sort of step operations. So you can put the asterisk right there, and we'll just say tester, and I want to yield 1, yield 2, yield 3. So this might be good if you just are sort of wanting some sort of synchronous like data, but you want to have this sort of step count. So I can say const gen equals tester. I'm going to capitalize it right there. Tester. I can look at what my generator actually is, and let's look at it. So it's just an object. So I can say generator.next and look at it. So it got value of 1. Then I can say gen.next, gen.next. Now I can console log gen.next, and we got value 3, right? And it'll keep running. I can do a for each on there, or a for of, I guess, a while or a while loop, and look at, while it has a next, then we can keep logging it out. So we already looked at most other things, async and await. Let's look at that, see if this works. So we can say async function greet, and I have to do this with the arrow, with the regular function keyword, just because the way I'm running it. Takes in the name, we'll just return hello name. So now let's log out greet Theo. So it's a promise at this point what we're returning. So I think we should be able to do, if I'm not mistaken, greet.then response console.log response. Let's make sure. Okay, cool. So this actually returns to us a promise, but we can also do this. We can change it to await, const awaited name equals await greet. So obviously this doesn't make sense here, but if you're doing more actually like database operations or API calls, this will give you that more synchronous-like feeling instead of using promises. So we say await Theo, and then we can say console log awaited name, and wait, yeah, I don't think I can use this here again because of the way I'm running it. I need to upgrade my node, I think. I might need another flag, but anyways, yeah, we can sort of look at this, and that's how we can look at that that response stream right there. Finally, let's look at getters and setters with classes. So let me make sure I have this right. I have a class of user, and or let's look at it with objects rather. We'll change this to objects. So we can have a const user object, and we'll just have get. Yeah, I don't know if this will work on here. Let's say get. I'll just say console log getting. Let's make sure user object console.log user object name undefined. Okay, and then let's look at name Theo. Okay, so get, I don't know. I think I need to, I don't know why it's not get value. Yeah, let me come back to that. I don't know, it might be my node. Set value console log value object.age is 25. Yeah, I might need to look at that a little bit. Get and setter on there. It's like the proxy video I did. Let me come back to that. I actually don't use the get and set a ton. I know this works. Get getters and setters on here. Let's try real quick with a class just so that I'm not losing my mind. Say class user. We could say get log getting, and we'll just say prop. Yeah, let me look at this prop. We'll say user, new user. And we'll say console.log user.age. So it's undefined. Yeah, let me let me come back to that and look at that. But anyways, guys, this is about a 30-minute intro to ES6. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys will see next. And as always, take care. I'll see you guys in the next video.